perfect segue into our next witness, Mr Taseer. We welcome you and certainly look forward to your personal experiences. Thank you.
Senators and members of the Commission, thank you for this opportunity. Now, the purpose of a law, any law, should be to promote justice in society. And a law that promotes injustice should lose its moral legitimacy and hence its rationale for existence. In 2011, my father, the then governor of Punjab, publicly supported a poor Christian woman who was accused of blasphemy. In order to silence him, religious parties accused him of blasphemy, and he was gunned down by his bodyguard after a systematic campaign by religious parties calling for someone to take his life. Being accused of blasphemy in Pakistan is in itself a death sentence, with no judge, no jury, but straight to the executioner. We have heard much talk today about defects in the law of blasphemy. But those who are tried under this law are in fact the luckier ones. Increasingly, people are beaten to death, shot, gunned down on the spot over a mere accusation. In marketplaces, in universities, wherever people have a score to settle or an advantage to be gained. In the case of my father, it was not a trial by the law that took his life. Indeed, the courts found him posthumously innocent of the accusation of blasphemy. What took his life was the mere accusation, followed by public calls for vigilante murder. The law has left the courtroom and has entered the public domain to be adjudicated on and punishment to be executed by the mob. A mob that is a state within a state and that the state itself bends its knee to. It comprises usually political parties that galvanize their support base through blasphemy and through blasphemy accusations and the blasphemy law. I too have been accused of blasphemy for showing solidarity with the victims of this law and carry a fatwa, i.e. a death proclamation on my head. It was no court that convicted me. Again, it was a mob that guarantees a ticket to heaven for anyone who takes my life. The very existence of this law in our statute books has itself radicalized society. It has signaled to a religious majority that the sanctity of their religion is under catastrophic threat and that they must take extreme measures to defend it. And quick on the heels of any blasphemy accusation are public calls for murder to avenge the perceived slight. Now, any law that seeks to inflame religious passion cannot ever be used in the service of justice. It is in fact redundant to speak about the abuse or the misuse of the blasphemy law. Such a law can only be used for the miscarriage of justice as an instrument of persecution. Of Pakistan's prisoners under the blasphemy law, roughly half are from minority communities, despite the fact that such communities make up less than 5% of the population. All are from the most economically disadvantaged sections of Pakistani societies. These include the elderly, the infirm, underage children, the mentally and physically handicapped, most of them illiterate, all of them poor, farm workers, petty shopkeepers, peasants, sweepers, laborers, sewerage and gutter cleaners. It's a law that preys on the weakest. I work closely with Pakistan's prisoners under the blasphemy law, and I can testify that I have never seen a single case of blasphemy that is not preceded by a pre-existing argument, where it would not have been in the economic or political interests of the accuser to level this charge. I can also testify that I have never seen an instance where the accused gets due process, whether it's my father, who was accused of blasphemy and gunned down simply for proposing a change to the law, or Junaid Hafiz, a promising young professor, a Fulbright scholar. He spent the last 8 years in jail without the presumption of innocence, without the right to a fair trial, without the right to an impartial tribunal, without the right to a legal defense, without the right to bail, without the right to humane treatment under detention, and without the right to a trial in a reasonable time. Judges continually rotated, hearings adjourned for no reason, and in the case of Junaid Hafiz, his lawyer murdered in broad daylight. How can we expect justice under a law that plays on religious sentiments and signals for mob violence? How can there ever be justice when judges, lawyers, and the police all become potential targets of an enraged mob if they so much as give the accused a fair hearing? All of you must have heard of Asia Bibi, and thanks to my father's sacrifice, she was Pakistan's most famous prisoner under the blasphemy law, perhaps the world's most famous prisoner under the blasphemy law. She is a free woman today, but there are 200 more Asia Bibis in jail in Pakistan today, without their right to due process. These are Pakistan's prisoners of conscience, prisoners without trial, and there's no Governor Salman Taseer to speak for them. It is in their name that I speak to you today, not as members of the United States Congress, but as human beings. This is our fight, and we will fight it. But be our friends in this fight. Help us consign these pernicious laws to the dustbin of history where they belong. Always remember Asia Bibi, but do not forget Junaid Hafiz and the 200 others who suffer under the blasphemy law today. We owe them justice, and this, I believe, is what my father's legacy asks of us. Thank you.
And quite a legacy that is, Sean. Thank you so much. And our final witness